Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balzerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real-world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To learn more about our AI-powered data security platform, please visit centra.io. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Data. My guest today is an accomplished leader with over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, co-founder of the Chicago IIA and ISACA Hacking and Cybersecurity Conference, currently Associate Director of Security Threat and Incident Management in the healthcare industry. Jason Torres, welcome to the show.
Thanks, brother. It's good to be here.
Glad we finally made this happen. And, it was good meeting you a few weeks ago at the Innovate Conference.
It was. I mean, yeah, it was, phenomenal conference in a beautiful location. It brought us both from, the gloomy Midwest down to the sunny beach and sunny shore of Florida there. So yeah, it's good times, man.
Yeah, fantastic conference, fantastic location. So, Jason, you heard, some of these questions at Innovate, right? A lot of conversation around it. So, in your professional opinion, what's the biggest data security challenge organizations are facing?
Oh, data security. I think that that comes up probably just as much as AI in most conversations. But yeah, I mean, data is, data is still the thing that runs every business, literally every business. And, when you look at it, the still the number one data security issue, I would say is, well, there's probably two, but I'm going to go with the first one. One, knowing what all your data is and where it resides. I think that that is still a number one indicator for most organizations. Not talking directly about mine. It's just my knowledge and insights, and talking to all kinds of security and non-security professionals all throughout the world. Knowing where that data is, and then who's attached to that data. I think that's still those two things still run in my mind, neck and neck, hand in hand, overall.
Yeah, I mean, that's been an issue for years, right? And
Yep.
every industry struggles. I would say, probably the two biggest industries, not that I'm saying these are the only ones, right? It is likely financial, obviously, right? They're highly regulated. And I think a close second, also no surprise, highly regulated is healthcare, right? Where you're at. Surprise.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
How are you seeing, or how are you thinking folks should be solving for this in those highly regulated industries? Because data sprawl, data size, data sprawl is a real thing. Healthcare, right? Like, creation of new data is not going to stop. That's happening on a minute by minute basis, I'm assuming. So how should people get their hands around this?
I think it comes back to the basics. I mean, we got to be honest, wherever you're at from a security posture or understanding perspective, it's, getting back to knowing where your data is, having that full visibility, however you get there. From a lot of organizations, it could be, a very difficult path to go through and identify, classify, and understand where it's at. But, getting back to the basics, I mean, just like in your life of understanding, hey, where is all my data, within my home network, or in my, my home financial situation. I mean, you got to start with identifying where it's at, categorizing, and then shifting to understanding who has access to all of it. I mean, way back when, 20 years ago, when I first landed in my first real healthcare gig, looking at it from a, IT risk, IT compliance perspective, it was, all right, we need to look at, overall IT, risks and data, and understanding, all right, how is data traversing through all of our systems? Where is data being outputted to, at that time, paper medical records and, faxing things and all that. Man, it was a struggle. And we said, yeah, all we need is technology to advance, and we can secure it and figure that out.
It's all we need, more technology.
Yeah. Just more technology to wrap around it, to understand it. But yeah, I mean, from there, the technology itself, it grew, it advanced, it developed. And Yeah. So, I mean, it's still the point of it may not be in a filing cabinet, but, the data resides somewhere on some device in some way, shape, or form. Gotta get your hands around it.
I gotta say, from a personal perspective, I feel seen by that, but by what you said. Like even in your home network, I'm actually looking around my office right now, right? Like I've got paper, sensitive paper everywhere, like physical paper. And then just the other day, I was looking for something, like we always do, right? And I'm like, is it in my Google Drive? Is it in my OneDrive? Is it on my desktop? Is it on a flash drive? Like, finally, I found it right after checking three locations.
Sure. Sure.
And it's funny, right? If I can't even keep track of my own stuff, that's my fault for sure. Definitely difficult in organizations like all of ours, right? Where it's multiple people doing the same darn thing, right? Creating something, plopping it somewhere. Maybe it's appropriate there, maybe not. So, Jason, you've been in, healthcare specifically for about 20 years.
Yeah.
I am curious. How have you seen kind of the growth of data security in that industry? Going from a lot of paper, there's still a lot of paper, right? I know you deal with a lot of paper, but probably more so dealing with a lot of folks that have super critical jobs, and certainly being IT folks and being security folks is not top of mind for their jobs.
It is not. It is not. I mean, yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, as you're trying to understand and get your arms wrapped around, overall data security and where it's at. I mean, yeah, HIPAA comes into play in what, 2004, so that starts getting some good guardrails around, hey, you gotta start securing stuff. You gotta understand where it's at. You've gotta, do risk assessments around it. I think it slowly grew and developed mostly because of, hey, from a technology perspective, more stuff being introduced, more connectivity amongst systems and everything with it. So again, it's slowly started to grow and morph. And yeah, I mean, from an overall, security perspective, at first it's, hey, if they're bringing in technology, we'll bring in technology. So, and it turned into hey, they're going to bring in that. Okay, we'll bring in that. Well, it's only feasible to so many levels to throw, another tool at something, and then you move into consolidation or whatnot. But that's another caveat. But it moved into hey, we need to partner. We need to understand, hey, that this is a growing situation in terms of one needing to understand and get the buy-in at the tone at the top. Because hey, as you saw more, data leakage, data breaches, things like that going on, there's dollars attached to it. Hey, if we want to keep growing, we want to keep building, want to keep researching, we want to keep, improving, patient care. What are we doing to minimize those, incidences from a breach perspective, but also the overall, patient trust and integrity around it? So it flips to the buy-in at the tone of the top, and then trying to weave in the overall security awareness and understanding into the day-to-day operations. Hey, yeah, if you think something looks funny, or, I'm uploading a file to XYZ site, if you're getting a gut feeling of maybe I shouldn't be doing that, totally reach out to us. I mean, that's part of it, the education of, hey, we're trying to educate you to be more aware of what sites are you going to, where are you throwing data, et cetera. So weaving in that overall security awareness and education, I think that's, the best thing that we can be doing going forward. Once we identify where all the data is, the processes and all that, it's building in the internal mental and, overall activity controls of, hey, how should I be handling this data? So
And has that been successful for you? I mean, I've had a few conversations with other friends out there in healthcare, and it's been about a 50-50 on that. When I ask the same question, they're like, "Oh yeah, some people like super successful, no problem. We've got it baked into the culture." Others are like, you know, these doctors, like they're super smart, right, in their thing, but they simply do not care and they don't want to be bothered. How about
Is it 100%? No. It really isn't 100%. I wish to say that it was, hey, we've got, full compliance and full understanding, but, you know, it's ultimately one of those we have to keep, I want to say pushing, but we have to keep partnering because, there's always going to be pushback. You got the thirds principle. You got, one third is going to be totally on board. Let's do this. Another third that's going to be like, yeah, we're just going to ignore you. And you got the other third of they're kind of in between. They could go on the positive side or the, hey, we need to work on side. So it's a continuous battle, but ultimately, these people have access to the data. These people are trusted to be responsible with it. You know, have keep working with them to make sure we can minimize the overall insider risk, issues that arise and the data security issues.
I like it. And good to hear, right? Good to hear as someone who goes to the doctor every now and then, not nearly as much as I should, but every now and then.
Yeah.
So going back to what you said earlier, you really said two facets, and it's going to tie into what you just said about these doctors and medical folks are trusted to have access. So you mentioned knowing who is attached to the data. That's probably ownership, but also access. So I would imagine in I was going to pick on healthcare, but it's really every industry, right? This is the case where you've got the owner and you've got probably a group that's easily identifiable, right? These people should have access, but then you certainly have the nth degree folks that, should have access to aspects of that. So how are how have you really tried wrapping your hands around some of that? Or how would you recommend other folks in your similar position do that?
Eh,
'Cause it's not easy, right? Not easy for anybody. A lot of organizations say, "Oh, I'm gonna go after the data owner. I'm gonna go talk to that data owner." And in some industries, some organizations, you could be super successful with that, right? Because it is small, it's more intimate, there's that culture. But in others where you have the data owner that created something, they don't necessarily know who's gonna touch it or why. It's kinda out of their hands and maybe they don't even care. So I'm curious how you're battling that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is partnership, understanding, who's doing what from a development perspective, from an integration perspective. I wish to say that, hey, we have a hand and a pulse, on the day-to-day operations for every application, for every type of data, for every vendor that's involved. It's just not feasible. So, setting the guardrails in place from from a policy, from a standards, from an overall, operations viability perspective, it lays the groundwork for understanding of, hey, here's the normal course of operation of how we should be, going about with utilizing this data, from developing this, from then sharing it. Yeah, it can break into so many other facets. I mean, not just, from a first party perspective, but then from a third party perspective. Like, okay, yeah, the data used to be in a filing cabinet. Then it used to be, on maybe a desktop somewhere. Then it used to be on a server in the data center. Now it is, yeah, on servers in multiple data centers, all throughout the world. So it's, yeah, keeping track of, all right, where are we putting it? Where are the expectations of the, where the data resides and the security around it? Yeah. I mean, that's, again, it comes back to partnership, relationship, and, continuous education.
You teased it, and certainly you can't go anywhere without hearing these 2 letters, right? You can't go to any conference without there being a talk about these 2 letters. Good old AI, right? Good old
Good old
AI
AI.
in all the shapes and forms. And when I say AI, I'm including co-pilots and all of that good stuff. So, how do you recommend folks combat that? Because I think you laid out some good things, right? Have a pulse, have the guardrails, keep track, and I think that's still valid, right? Even with AI. But I personally feel like AI just made it worse, right? Like it's accelerated the pace at which this randomness happens and data decides to fly around. So how are you keeping up?
I'm a I'm a positive person. So, I'm always, it's kind of one of those things I go back to within my team that I have currently. I like to do icebreakers and hey, try to understand people more and more in a remote world. And, one of the questions I had this week was what's your favorite movie quote? And, it goes back to Star Wars to, Return of the Jedi when Luke's talking to Vader and basically tells them, hey, there's good in you, there's still good in you. And I like to look for the good in all situations. I mean, yeah, of course there's always the bad, the crazy, the ugly, whatever you want to tag it. But I look at it as a way to help. Is it easy? Is it making things extremely satisfying and easy processes? No. I mean, there's complexities around it, but when you look at AI from any asset, from a, data security, perspective, yeah, I mean, data is being created through it. But again, it goes back to setting up the foundational guardrails to keep things going to where, InfoSec is not a place of no, it's a place of go and go in terms of, hey, we can build it, we can grow it, um, and we can, support it. But yeah, we've got to have the foundations in place. AI governance committees are a phenomenal way to start and set up that baseline. What are the expectations from a top level leadership perspective in terms of utilizing AI? What data is going to that AI, and then what are the expected outcomes to help the business utilizing that AI? Again, I mean, you got to have that in place along with policies, overall understanding, education around it. That's where you're going to get the most foundational and, thought-provoking discussions to guide things going forward. By just throwing AI out there and saying, "Yeah, we're using it," you know, it's the wild wild west. That's a recipe for disaster.
Just check the box, right? I think 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of organizations were doing that, right? Because it was the shiny object. It wasn't new, but it was becoming more commoditized, right? Like even in your personal life, you can have one of the first iterations of, OpenAI back then. So executives were like, make it happen, right? And
Yep.
when they say make it happen, you jump, right? You jump as high as you can and make it happen.
Of course.
I do like though, obviously this recording is not going to go live this week, but you brought up a Star Wars quote on Star Wars week. I love
I
it,
did,
man.
dude.
I
I
love
did.
it. Awesome. Oh man. So we're talking about AI. Pivot slightly. This isn't necessarily data security centric, but I am curious your thoughts. Again, you go to a lot of conferences as do I, and we see then hear it. The AI for good, right? Seeing the good in you, if you will, back to your quote there. There's a lot of vendors, right, bringing AI into their solutions. Now, whether, how fully baked they are, who knows? I'm curious your thoughts there, right? Using AI for blue teaming, essentially.
I mean, that's where we're looking next, at least from our team and talking to a lot of other folks that are leading blue teams across all industries, whether it's in the Chicagoland area or throughout the rest of the US and world. But yeah, I mean, how can we utilize AI to bring our overall defensive game up? How can we mature it in terms of what we're trying to do? We all have great technology that's in place. We have phenomenal people that are literally working their butts off day in and day out to make things better. We've got processes that a lot are manual in nature still. So where I see AI flowing into that is, hey, how can we accelerate, the overall investigations, bring things down from, whether it's hours or minutes down to, even seconds or, a minute or two. What does it mean to basically leverage that AI in that aspect? And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do. So again, looking at it from a blue team perspective, I'm hopeful that it's going to help us to be better defenders, for our organization. And, it does get back to the costing element of it. Yeah. I mean, we try to bring in a solution that does, whether it's an AI, SecOps analyst or engineer, et cetera. I mean, yeah, there's cost to it. All right. How can we quantify those costs from a metrics perspective? How can we lay out the associated business case for it? I mean, that's important, because one, it speaks to the business perspective of, hey, when we bring this in, here's how it's going to help us, whether from a costing or a acceleration, method. But then it helps us to lay out, hey, these are expectations, not just for us, but for the vendor themselves too. So, hey, as we're going through RFPs and RFIs and all that fun stuff and activate some POCs, like, these are the tangible outcomes that we need to see out of it. I mean, it's not just, hey, InfoSec's buying another tool, because it's flashy and bright and has AI attached to it, but hey, it's going to be a game changer for us because of X, Y, and Z supported by 1, 2, 3.
I love that. That's why I brought it up because I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see it. So I've, like yourself, been in the industry, 20 years, and like yourself, right? We've seen a lot of these manual processes. Think about the SOC, right? The L1 analyst, I got to do this, do that. Like investigations would take minutes to hours. I mean, minutes if you're lucky, right? Doing all the required lookups and all that. Again, manually. Go look at my threat intel feeds, go and do a who is, go do that, go do that. And then I remember when UEBA, actually, even before that, when SIM really became kind of the big splash, like, oh, we're going to do all this. And that never really lived up, right? It was a necessary evil. It still is, right? We still have to have SIM solutions. Like they are important. Before anyone gets the pitchforks out, they are important. They are valuable. And then I saw UEDA, kind of hit the market. Some of it was baked into the SIM, some of it were new solutions, and UEBA never lived up, really. Like they touted, hey, we're going to help you start to understand behaviors, kind of AI-ish, if you will. At least, initial iterations. And, those deployments would take, 12 to 18 months to really see value if you ever did. And then finally, I hate to say it because I love this industry, SOAR, right? SOAR was kind of promised to be the initial level up, right, to the analysts where, hey, we're going to automate and orchestrate and automate these particular monotonous activities. And they did, right? If you had the proper experience and proper, services, and then finally do the response. And now finally we have AI doing some of that. And bringing that whole story to back to data security here. I'm excited to see some of the new data security platforms coming out that are going to walk you through, hey, we see this data, we see this thing based on what we see, based on what we know, based on the context. Here's what it actually means for you instead of an analyst having to do all of that work because data security is tough.
Holistically, yeah. I mean, just adding on to what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, it started as, hey, we've got this tool that's gonna, output this report. Okay, what can I do with this report? Well, this report could then go into this system to then go, it's growing from tables and spreadsheets and reports to more interactive diagrams that can really map out and say, hey, you know, this threat actor went into here, pivoted to here, grabbed this file here, went over, like, it's another level. I mean, we couldn't really visualize it before. I mean, yeah, we could try and, have somebody flow chart it out. Hey, how
A post-mortem.
threat actor. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you could visualize it post-mortem, but seeing it real time and now and being able to stitch it all together, and even, I'll say, even putting some judgment around it. Like, hey, based on all these, correlation threat vectors, like, here's a snapshot from a, computer just saying, hey, here's what we think the risk is and why. Man, stuff like that, I mean, would be hours put into an after action report to really summarize what happened.
And I'm seeing that quite a bit where I talk to some of these vendors, I see their solutions, and then I get the flashback, right? The PTSD of like, oh my God, I used to do that. It would take me far too long, and now you basically automated my job for a couple years. Like, first, ooh, like, that was valuable that I did, but then it's like, yay, at the same time, like, finally, someone did it. So you mentioned RFIs. I think that's gonna resonate with a lot of the listeners. So, I wanna pick your brain real quick. So, for the organizations that are starting to do continuing to do whatever, evaluations of products out there, in particular, products touting AI, I'm really locking it to blue team at this point, not anything else. Um, do you have any recommendations for them to quantify value, but also take that quantified value and actually be able to speak to the executives on, we're going to do this thing, and here's what it's going to result in from both an OpEx and a CapEx perspective, i.e., personnel, processes, all that?
Loaded question.
Of course.
Um, yeah, I mean, but it's crazy. I think about, let's say 10 years ago, like something like that, like, all right, I want an RFI, RFP document for, let's say new MSSP trying to bring in, or maybe even your first one. It's like, all right, go to Sands, go to Gartner, go to, IANS, go to whoever, and, try and piece through a spreadsheet to then, all right, use this as my baseline template. And then you try and utilize that and say, all right, how can I break down all of this data and knowledge and things I'm trying to understand and speak that overall of the business? Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard to really, consolidate multiple spreadsheets into a couple slides. Now, I mean, look at it from an AI perspective. Try and understand what am I trying to get out of this? What am I trying to improve in my environment? So as I'm putting together my, RFI or RFP, okay, what are the top 5, top 10, challenges I'm trying to address, related to my business, and then building upon that to say, okay, what are the metrics I'm using now to track that? And then taking that and saying, okay, whatever flavor of AI you want to use, help me to explain this to a CFO perspective, to a COO perspective, to a audit committee, perspective. Those things you're able to translate in a faster time in a more, targeted manner to say, okay, I can take what I'm trying to put forth for the next, 1 to 3 years for bringing in this new, these new solutions, technologies, et cetera. And here's the translation of why. So, before it used to be, all right, let's throw it in a spreadsheet. Let's put it in a few slides. Let's practice, what our delivery is. Now it's, hey, let's piece it together. I mean, is it going to be 100% accurate and complete? No. I mean, there's going to be a few iterations of it, but if you can automate, let's say 80% of the work in a targeted manner, and then even, take it and not just socialize it internally, but take the concept of what you're trying to do and go into the InfoSec community. So, I love, some of the great things, at least in the Chicagoland area. There's a CISO dinner group of security leaders that probably has, probably 4,000 people in the listserv of where, hey, I'm trying to do this. Here's what I'm thinking. Can you offer some thoughts or insights? You'll have people raising their hand, sending emails, text messaging you. Yeah. Let's talk for 30 minutes and hash through what you're trying to do and what I've done before, or I can offer some thoughts and guidance on it. I think that's where you translate from, keeping it internally within your organization and trying to, butt heads to, hey, let me talk to somebody else that's been through this rodeo before, and to see how they succeeded with it.
Super important, right? There's tons of really smart people out there, which is great. You just got to reach out and ask for help every now and then. Yeah. Last thing that I'm super interested in, again, going back to the RFPs, RFIs, or really the proposal to bring in something new. So I know in my past when I'd bring in a new tool, I always had to account for what do I need from a personnel perspective to either run it, operationalize it, or both, right? Like,
Yeah.
5 years ago, you could not bring in something without accounting for that. Or I guess you could, right? But maybe it was going to be slow, right? Slow rolling to get up to speed, get up and running. AI being kind of the new equalizer, right? AI being in a lot of these tools, I feel like there's an expectation in most organizations now that anything new, you're not going to bring in new headcount, and you're likely going to upskill your current headcounts to do something else. So how how are you dealing with kind of that new reality that I'm assuming you're having to deal with as you look to bring in new tools?
I mean, great question. I mean, just reflecting back, again, let's say 10, 12 years ago, looking at bringing a solution, it was okay. We're going to need at least, one or two engineers to support, XYZ solution. And here's why,
Yep.
it could be, skill gaps or just, not enough, people power on the team to support it. So it kind of went from that to the mantra of, hey, we'll have professional services involved. The vendor
Yep.
will implement it, help us support with implementation, and then maybe they'll have a consultant associated with it for maybe up to a year after go live. That was kind of the mantra then. Okay, that's a cost we can bake into it and justification around it. Yeah, now you bring up a great point. I mean, as I'm, putting together justifications and business cases and things like that, reflecting back, it's like, yeah, we used to say, hey, we need more people with this, but now it's okay. What's going to be the impact? Yeah. So we can take our current team, we can take our current processes, but then within the RFI, the RFP process, it's okay. Well, maybe we're repurposing, people. Maybe we're taking from the same team to dedicate on this for, let's say 10, 20 hours a week, rather than 10 years ago, we needed two people assigned to this, 100 and 100, percent of their time each week. So we're able to scale it back based on the ability to implement more of this, automation through AI that really, a lot of it is verification in the back end, then active coding and overall, operational process change stuff that used to take a lot more, in-depth cultural change management. Now it's
Right.
okay. We can automate. We can go through it from that perspective. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's kind of what we're, at least I'm seeing in my org, but also friends in other orgs. It's, hey, we're going away from we need these people towards it to, okay, it's going to be a, operational impact, but hey, maybe we can leverage in our team, or we can look at other teams to say, hey, this effort is going to be jointly across, other pillars within IT. How can we work together cohesively to say, hey, how can we build this without having to spend extra money?
Good stuff. And I'm sure exciting for a lot of folks, right? It takes a lot of that complexity. And you mentioned spreadsheets. Man, oh man, have I had so many spreadsheets over the years of, well, to implement, it's going to be this. You had implementation, you had run, you had ongoing run rate, you had, okay, we're going to do this particular implementation, then we're going to do the next phase. Like it was, I mean, I was proud of those spreadsheets, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't want to do it ever again. That's for darn sure.
There you go.
Well, Jason, we mentioned it a few times throughout this episode. You and I, we've both been in the industry for a while now. Curious, what was your journey to get where you are today?
Oh, journey indeed. Yeah. I mean, coming out of school, so I studied accounting. So, technology was not the key indicator, took a few programming classes, back in college, and I liked technology, did a few things, from internship perspectives in college related to, help desk and kind of field tech services and things like that. But I first went towards the accounting angle, and first job out of school was with a law firm in downtown Chicago. And I would say probably about 7 months into it, I realized I am not an accountant. It was fun. It was okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, I understood numbers. I can talk through it. I can, prepare balance sheets, income statements, things like that. But I'm like, this is not really my thing. And found myself over to a hospital system in Chicago in their internal audit department. So, it's kind of one of those like, all right, I took some audit classes, in college, yeah, it is financial, operational related, but after I was there for a year and working with IT teams on some stuff, my boss is like, hey, I need somebody to focus on IT risk management, like
Mm,
holistically, like 24/7. I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. So it led to me, changing from that guy from finance that's always in IT to, hey, here's a guy that's trying to help us understand what are the risks related to, projects as we're activating them in IT. Or, it got to a point where, incidences and such were coming about. And, back then hospitals didn't really have infosec teams, cybersecurity
right.
teams. It was kind of one of those, hey, we handle it in infrastructure as a whole, and it goes from there. It led to an initiative and a drive to say, hey, the CFO, which we reported up to from a audit compliance perspective, brought in one of the big four accounting firms and said, hey, we're just going to do a cybersecurity gap assessment to
Mm,
say, all right, where are we at? Because we know that we're gonna continually see data security things going on, especially with the electronic medical record system, in play. Where do we stand? Where do we benchmark? What are we looking at? And, they went through, did their assessment and saw, hey, audit compliance perspective, IT risk management, it's looking pretty good. But everything else is, man, you've got this process and this team and that, it was very despair. And they're like, you really need something to bring it all together. And that was the initiative which led to, hey, bringing on our first CISO and being involved with, helping set up those interview panels, being on those, me as a IT risk, IT compliance guy being involved with that, it led to bringing on our first CISO. And then, you know, a month into the job, he's like, I need some help. You want to come over from, audit compliance over to here? I said, absolutely. So it led to from my career perspective, all right, I've officially switched over from the accounting guy to the audit guy, over to the cybersecurity guy. And it's pretty cool to build out a cybersecurity team at a healthcare organization over, I would say 7 years. It was a large growth and development. And, we went from 2 or 3 people to over 30 people in our infosec team. And, got to, got to be involved with a lot of stuff. I mean, especially once, COVID hit and trying to maintain a healthy working remote environment. I mean, yeah, clinicians and healthcare professionals were on site. I mean, saving you know all the lives that they could and keeping patient care going. But then all of us in the support areas, okay, how can we keep making the organization secure? What are those things we need to pivot from hey, we used to get around on the conference table and talk through it, and now how can we whiteboard things in a virtual manner and work through that? So learned a lot, did a lot. I mean, had my hands in everything from, IAM to GRC. And then, moving over to my current organization now, it's holistically SecOps. So now it's, hey, what are we doing to protect the organization in a holistic manner, but not just today. Let's keep that eye on, what does it look like, a year from now of where our org is trying to be from a maturity perspective, bringing together teams that used to be separate into one combined blue team. It's kind of been, things I've been working on over the last year and a half at my current organization, but also what we're trying to do in the future. It's pretty exciting.
quite the journey, and I'm not going to say atypical, but I feel like there's a lot of folks in cyber that don't necessarily come up through an audit background, right? I think a lot of folks assume
Yeah.
that to get into security, oh, I got to go and do either red teaming because red teaming's sexy, right? I'm gonna go be a hacker, right, and go learn that. Or they think they have to be a security analyst, right? And sit in the SOC, 24 by whatever, essentially 5, 7, what have you, to get to that next level. So How do you feel that's really helped you in your current role, maybe more so than a different background?
I think it gives a different vantage point. So, I mean, if you take everyone from the same background, same mindset, same mold, um, I think I'm not going to say it's going to hold back security teams, but I think you need to bring people in from different backgrounds, just to bring through and help see like, hey, let's assess the situation from this vantage point versus this vantage point, and here's why. I've seen in different organizations, yeah, where people come up, undergrad was maybe in English, and it's like, wow, and you're in IT security, like, but you take those different mindsets, those different methodologies. And I think that's what when you bring together in a security team, it gives it the most well-rounded feel that you can ever get to. Because again, you don't want everyone thinking the same thing, acting the same thing. You want people to bring in new ideas, new perspectives, and try and mold an overall, culture of security that can be seen from different angles.
Last question for you here. You had a pretty great background, so maybe it's nothing, but if you could go back in time, would you have made any changes along the road? Any other fork in the road you might have taken?
It's a good question. I mean, I do reflect sometimes, as moving from my last org to my current one and going through the job searching time, it did cause, some self-reflection in terms of all of it. It's like, hey, if I did a tangent, actually when I moved over to cybersecurity, I was part-time pastor and trying to help out my local church. And it was a different dynamic. I was taking classes and doing things like that, and I think back like, man, how different would it be if I didn't go that way and maybe I went towards, a master's program in cybersecurity or something like that for those, 5 years I was going down that route. But then I think about it, I'm like, okay, for me, learning about that, but then also getting in front of people that helped me to be a better presenter, I think, be a better communicator because, getting in front of people on Sunday mornings, a few times a month, I mean, it helps you to grow as a communicator, as somebody who can understand, situations, be able to convey knowledge to people of all types. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I mean, it's been a solid career. It's been great stuff. I mean, I've got a loving family behind me. I mean, I got a phenomenal wife. We've been married, to celebrate 20 years. I've
Wow.
got two great kids that are in high school. A daughter who's a sophomore, a son who's a freshman. So, I look at that through all the times of them supporting me up when, hey, dad's got to be gone on Mother's Day of COVID because there's a security incident situation going on and the FBI is on the phone. Like, those are things they reflect on, like, oh, dad gets to talk to FBI. Not everyone wants to talk to the FBI. I mean, unless it's a courteous phone call or maybe they're sitting in on a tabletop, like that's great. But yeah, it's not something. Yeah, the first few times I'm like, oh, this is cool. But then it's like, all right, yeah, it's getting to be a little much. So,
Yeah, yeah. To to someone outside the industry, it sounds super simple and super cool. It's like, no, it's really not. Please no.
no. But overall, I mean, an interesting path. I mean, I think everyone has their own path and, every journey begins with the first step. So, for people that are trying to get into infosec, it's not going to be the same for everyone. There's no blueprint of, hey, here's how I, become a CISO or become a security leader. It all depends on the time you put in, the knowledge you develop, and then the action you put forth, and then ultimately the relationships you build along the way. I think that's what defines you.
Great tips. So, Jason, if folks want to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
LinkedIn, dude. LinkedIn. I mean, yeah, I'd love to say, yeah, send me a text message or whatnot, but I try to be active on LinkedIn, supporting people. I probably have at least a dozen people I'm trying to find, help find, new jobs or move to a different role or just, offer some people some guidance and mentoring, I'll do what I can. It's great that we have a platform like LinkedIn that allows you to connect, to share, to grow and develop. Yeah, there's, some negatives to the platform as there is with anything social media, but yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Awesome. And hey, recruiters, if you didn't hear that, reach out to Jason. He's got some folks looking for jobs. I don't know the expertise, but sounds like Jason's got some folks.
It's all levels. It's all
Yeah,
levels.
love
Yeah,
it. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great episode.
absolutely, brother. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Of course, of course. And big thank you to the audience. Really hope you enjoyed the episode and learned something today. Please tell others in your network to follow and listen. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centro. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte-scale data protection without the fuss, please visit centro.io. Catch you next time.